Okay, let's start with a little bit of NFL here, and this is from Angel. He says, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, the Jets should finish 10-7 with a wild card spot.
Angel, I think they're going to do well as long as Aaron Rodgers holds up. But what's different about Jets football today is they remade the entire offensive line. Now, they busted some number one picks that didn't work out. They've gotten rid of all those guys. I think the acquisition of Tyron Smith, the Pro Bowl left tackle, who had been a left tackle forever, protecting Dak Prescott, I think that makes a massive, massive difference. So I think if Rodgers stays healthy, I think that they're a team to be reckoned with because they've got people. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, Ohio State, he's a stud. And now you add Mike Wilson there, Mike Williams, the ex-Charger, and you added 3 offensive linemen. And Breece Hall came back from the knee injury, and he's a fine running back. He's out of Iowa State, and they've always played rugged defense. So, Angel, I believe, like you, I think the Jets are going to be pretty good. Next question.
Okay, let's go on down here. It's another comment on Aaron Rodgers. Everyone's curious about this guy. 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is going to try to scramble and juke like 20-year-old Aaron Rodgers used to, and something's going to snap again. Don't know how much he has left.
Well, I guess that's a safe thing to assume, but he's not a running quarterback. He just moves the pocket and gets out of pressure. And he makes plays because his vision is so unbelievable. His ability to read defenses is phenomenal. But they've surrounded him with some real warriors in that offensive front. This is going to be a very different offensive line from the New York Jets. So I'm not worried about the fact he might be approaching 40. I think the guy can still play as long as he doesn't get hurt. And it was a fluke injury. I mean, he didn't get crushed when he went down at the start of last season. He just made a turn and his foot exploded. Give him some space and let's just see.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember him even being hit on that. It was just the weirdest thing. But, he's been there on the sidelines. He's been watching the team, so, through part of last year. But it was always funny when Zach Wilson would throw an interception. You'd see Aaron Rodgers roll his eyes back. So let's see if the wise one can come back.
They got 1 year to fix it. And also, they're going to be playing to save Robert Saleh's job, I think, as head coach. We move on.
Okay, let's go here to Jeff. He goes, I'm ready for disappointment as I always am, being an Arizona Cardinals fan. LOL.
Well, it's just not a good situation. I have huge reservations about Michael Bidwell, the owner of the team. We got to the end of last season, Jeff, and it was just a disaster. They had, 5 or 6 vice presidents quit on the football administration side and the business side. I think it's a disaster. Jonathan Gannon was hired. He came from Philadelphia. He's got great track credentials as a defensive coordinator. There's no doubt that they've got 3 or 4 really good skilled people on offense, but I don't know about the rest of the roster. I mean, they're cutting number 1 draft picks or offensive linemen, et cetera. So it's just at this point, I don't think it's a very well-run franchise. They're in a very unstable situation. And we'll see if Kyler Murray can rally this thing, and he's got to stay on the field. I mean, if they're going to compete, he's got to be able to play, and he needs to stop running because he's gotten busted up a couple of times because he's always in scramble mode.
It's interesting that we praise the NFL for trying to have parity and the revenue sharing and how it makes the league more balanced. But there are still teams like this that are in the dregs, that are in the gutter every year. It seems the Cardinals are one of them. But lately, the last 4 to 5 years, they have been better. We were all optimistic, and then they always disappointed, didn't they? I mean, so it's a rough go. Bidwell, he's just jinxing the whole thing.
Use the last name, Bidwell.
Yeah,
Bidwell, Arizona Cardinals. Bidwell, Phoenix Cardinals. Bidwell, St. Louis Cardinals. Bidwell, Chicago Cardinals.
Oh, he goes all the way back there.
That's a family hand-me-down thing. They don't have any football credibility or accomplishment. It was just given to them in the will and the estate. That's a big issue as to why they are where they are. Jeff, Arizona, good luck to you. Hope you'll continue to follow us.
Okay, let's go here. Angel had a comment here about the AFC West. He says, with the AFC being loaded, I don't see the Broncos as a playoff team, but I do see Denver going 9-8 in 2024.
9 wins might be a reach. 9 wins, you're telling me Bo Nix is going to be superstar. 9 wins, you're telling me they're not going to have any injuries. When the hell's that ever happen? But I think they'll be competitive as long as they can keep their guys on the field and Nix grows to what Peyton really needs. I think they're going to be good, and they're going to be a hell of a lot better than I've been. But 9 wins, that's tough. This division, AFC West, is pretty doggone rugged, considering you got to play Mahomes and you got to play Justin Herbert, and then you got to play the whole aura of the Raider Nation. So 9 wins would be a stretch for me. If they get this thing close to 500 and they stay healthy, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree. Now, why did you think Denver held on to all three quarterbacks, though? I mean, are they just kind of hedging their bet?
Well, salary cap issues. If they cut either Stidham or they cut Zach Wilson, they take another hit. And they got so much dead money. It's an all-time record amount. Like, I want to say it's $55 million in dead money against the cap. Well, it's the Russell Wilson deal.
Yeah.
So at this point, insurance policy, if Nix can't handle it, or if Nix gets hurt, then you got two other veterans. And it's odd. Zach Wilson played really well in preseason for Sean Payton after just being horrific and out of touch and out of sync with everything he did with the New York Jets. So, yeah, it's going to be a hard season. I should say a growing season in Denver if they can keep their guys on the field.
Let's move on here. Let's go to Junior. Talk about the New York Football Giants. He goes, how long are the New York Football Giants going to stick with Daniel Jones? He stinks. Hashtag #1 overall pick.
Junior, they gave him a mega contract extension. I mean, they owe him volumes of money. Now, he's a great athlete. What's wrong in New York is not the quarterback per se. What's wrong in New York is, I think, the football decision makers per se. I don't think they've drafted well. I don't understand some of the free agent acquisitions. And I surely don't understand you letting Saquon Barkley go out the door and go to the enemy on the other side of the bridge, the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think the leadership and the decision making on the football side of the building has really caused the problems. If they could surround Jones with better players and protect him, the beating he took last year is maybe as bad as I've seen in the NFL in a long, long time. He's a tough guy and he's an athlete, but you got to have players. Last I checked, there's 11 guys on offense, and one guy can't do it by himself, and that's what's gone on in New York.
Jones always strikes me as just sort of the guy was really good in college, but really maybe not an NFL guy, but it was just the timing of the years and the draft and where New York Giants happened to be. They needed a quarterback. He was at the top of the list, but I don't think we felt the same way about him as we do about CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams or any of these other top picks.
No, I agree with you. I mean, he came out of I think it was a Duke. He came out of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and yeah, he was the thrower, but he wasn't Eli Manning. He wasn't Peyton Manning. He wasn't any nationally known Caleb Williams type talent. And they got him and they got Saquon Barkley, and I thought, okay, they're going to fix this thing. But then they did nothing. And then Jones kept getting hurt, and the number one picks hurt. They had number one picks that broke down physically, number one pick that they threw out the door because they broke down mentally on him. He wasn't dedicated to be a pro. I mean, they've had a lot of problems with overall draft choices per se. So he just needs to get better people around him. Next question.
Okay. Do you want to take any complaints from the
please
fans?
do. Yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, here we go.
I'm probably making reference to you.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go here to Big Daddy. Go, this old man is a moron.
You shouldn't talk about John Riley that way. I'm a moron. Thank you. Hey, Big Daddy, thank you for participating and following. I hope you'll continue to follow us. But no, I'm not a moron. I just know what I know.
You know what you know. But see, the thing is that you've been doing one man's opinion for 40 years, and you're going to piss people off.
No, here's the question. Big Daddy, if you got a beef about something I said as it relates to a team or a player, let me know what the beef is so I can respond. You just can't identify me under the umbrella of the word moron. That's not right. I just gave you an hour worth of insight for every team in the NFL, and you called me a moron? Or you meant him? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no one brings this amount of data to a podcast. Okay, here we go. Let's get in a little bit of college football. This is from Chris. He goes, something brewing in Westwood. Don't sleep on UCLA, saw the resilience they showed overcoming a 10-0 deficit, rushing for 23 total yards against a perennial defensive powerhouse like Hawaii was remarkable. And they did it in front of a hostile crowd of 8,000 Hawaii fans. Look out, Big Ten. Oh, yeah. And Coach Foster is second to none speaking in front of the press. Sound off.
I guess Chris is not a UCLA fan, or maybe he's a pissed off UCLA fan. I think it's going to be a long season. I really do. And the wreckage and the aftermath of Chip Kelly is going to haunt them for a while. A, they got money problems. B, they're in the wrong conference. C, they haven't been able to recruit. And D, the cupboard's kind of bare. I was stunned. And John and I were at the San Diego State game against East Texas State Chamber of Commerce.
A&M.
Yeah. We were at Snapdragon, and I texted him, and he was sitting in the 50-yard line seats drinking champagne or whatever. I said, UCLA is losing in the third quarter at Hawaii 10-0. I shook my head.
I remember.
Jeez, how is that possible? And Hawaii is a bottom echelon team in the Mountain West Conference. So I just think it's going to be a really tough year. I'm not going to dump on Deshaun Foster. I was stunned that they did not get more out of their offense because Eric Bieniemy is the one is really coaching the offensive side of the football now as their coordinator. And they couldn't run the ball worth a lick. I think they had 18 rushes for 34 yards at Hawaii. How's that possible? And Garber's the quarterback. At one point was 8 for 21 throwing the football. How's that possible? 6th-year guy. So they got a lot of work to be done there. I think it's going to be a really hard season, and maybe you just got to transition out of what was left behind from Chip Kelly, and he's got to go get his own players. And he and Bieniemy have great credentials in the community recruiting. So maybe it's just not going to be this year. Maybe it's going to be a year down the road. Well, maybe they'll turn the corner. But road back, I think, is going to be hard because I think Kelly left a real mess here.
Yeah, well, it's your first year coaching. It's going to be tough to rebuild the culture. Sure. But wasn't it like last year about this time, the kid was Dante Moore, right? That was the quarterback that was a freshman that didn't play very much. If I recall, he transferred to Oregon, but I guess he's going to be backing up Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah. I don't know if you call it a redshirt season, but he will be at Oregon. He'll be the quarterback next season.
Yeah. So UCLA, it's just weird. They don't have a football stadium on campus. You got to go to the Rose Bowl. And it's funny. Usually UCLA, you think of them as a basketball school first anyways.
Well, but they've had great success in football, chunks of time, but this chunk of time, no. Chris, thank you for the input. Go ahead, John.
Okay, let's get one more here from Greg. And he says, Lee, what additions would you like to see to improve the Padres for next season? Resign, go after one of the Mariners' starting 5 pitchers. They need hitters. Best sports show online and radio.
Well, you're correct with the last sentence. I'm not so sure that they have to go do a lot of stuff in the offseason. They're going to have to juggle the payroll a little bit because Profar is going to ask for a healthy pay raise. He's not going to play for $1.5 million. So that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on. Obviously, they've got tremendous investment in the veteran pitchers on the staff. I mean, they're committed to a lot of big money for a long period of time to Machado, to Tatis, to Bogarts, to Cronenworth. There's not a lot of cap space that they're going to be able to go do something creative. And by the way, Seattle's pitchers are all under contract, and I don't think they're going to be traded. If the Mariners don't get to the playoffs, I think there's going to be a general manager's change in addition to the managerial change they've already made. I think Jerry DiPoto might be on very thin ice in Seattle if this does not work out. And they're scuffling to be a 500 team, and they've let DiPoto do everything he's wanted. But Seattle's pitchers, I don't think, are available. And I just don't know that the Padres have any budget space to, quote, be a player in free agency. Prime example, if Roshi Sasaka from Japan gets posted or comes here as a 23-year-old, there's going to be a massive bidding war. But I don't see how the Padres could afford to bid on him only because of all the money that they've got invested in all these veteran players.
Well, first of all, why in the hell are we talking about next year?
It was right there at the front of my mind. Why are we worrying about December 1st in the winter baseball meetings? Pal, we got to get to October 1st.
Exactly.
But that being said, they're going to be dangerous as hell in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. This is just shaping up to be a great September, great pennant race. The NFL starting tonight. This is a great time to be a sports fan. In AJ, we trust, right? The executive of the year. You've called him that.
I think we got the executive of the year here, and we might have the manager of the year in San Diego's dugout. But that being said, Greg, we will talk once we drive into the football season and once we get to the approach of free agency and then we get to the winter baseball meeting. Yeah, we're going to definitely talk.
Okay, let's get some social media comments here. We got a lot more football questions. And let's go here. Look, Charger comment, and this is from Gabriel. He says, and this is what are the keys to the season. And he says, the key is we have a coach who knows how to unlock the player's ability on how to win.
Well, he changed the culture. He's making reference to Jim Harbaugh and the Bolts. I think the most unique thing, and I was mentioning this to somebody yesterday, and they asked me what I thought about Harbaugh, and I said, smart guy, dynamic guy, passionate guy, crazy man. He did it as a quarterback. He taught his players as a head coach in college to do it. And now he's back in the NFL, where he's already done it once in San Francisco. Now the opportunity to do it again. He is the most unique, experienced head coach I think of in the league, because he did it as a player and succeeded. And then he was able to translate what he learned and did as a quarterback to what they could do to become better players, whether that's at tiny University of San Diego, that's at Stanford, that's at Michigan. And obviously he did the same thing in terms of the bigger picture with the 49ers. So why wouldn't you expect him to be able to do it with the Chargers? I think he's really, really unique.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you shared that video on Twitter of all the success he had as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
A lot of those Charger highlights, and you could tell even back then that he was able to win games just by being smarter than a lot of the people on the field, because he wasn't the most athletic guy, but he would find ways to get creative to move the ball downfield. If you're a Charger fan, you got to be thrilled that there is a culture-changing leader in there to hopefully fix what the Spanoses have screwed up.
Am I correct if I'm reading between the lines that are coming out of your mouth that the word chargering will be extracted from the dictionary going forward?
Oh, no, that will never go away. As long as Spanos is here, that will still be a thing. But it's going to be a great year. I think it's going to be fun to see what they do.
How dare you criticize the first family of football, as they call themselves? The ones that have 16 winning seasons in 36 years and fired a Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame general manager, and a Super Bowl coach.
Yeah.
The first family of football.
How in the hell do you fire a coach that went 14-2? That one just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
On we go.
Okay, let's talk about the Chiefs here. And this is from Ray Toole. He says, there's no surprises here. I live in Missouri and moved here when Patrick Mahomes won his first. KC is a dynasty now.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you look at all the division titles, and then you look at 2 Super Bowls in a row, going for a third one. And can you imagine how many teams passed Patrick Mahomes in the draft before he got chosen by Kansas City? It's just absolutely amazing. So that's one of the unbelievable bright minds in football, and Andy Reid, and kind of a unique motivator. And I happen to think his general manager is a pretty good player personnel guy. And that quarterback, damn, that quarterback is good.
Yeah, I mean, remember when he first came onto the league, and we were all saying, how does this guy make these sidearm passes? He was like a middle infielder.
I remember calling him Harry High School.
Yeah.
Harry High School is going to get killed doing this. Well, Harry High School's got a couple of rings on his finger now.
Well, did you see the behind the back, no look pass during the preseason?
Well, he wouldn't do that in a regular season.
He might. I mean, if they've been working on that, they did the ring around the Posey bit a couple of years ago. Okay, let's move on here. Oh, we've got to talk about tonight. And this is from Conrad. He says, for Thursday Night Football season opener, it's like Christmas morning.
It's unbelievable. And we love baseball. And John and I talk a lot of baseball on the podcast and a lot of junk off the podcast. But the NFL is the NFL. And having lived it as the voice of the Chargers and the Seahawks, I can't tell you how electric it is on opening day, because you've gone through training camp, and prior to that, the OTAs, and prior to that, the draft, and before that, free agency during the winter. And here you are on the precipice, the start of the season. It's just really, really electric. Now, do you wind up going 12-5, or do you wind up going 5-12? Because I experienced all that in the season. It gets to be a grind if you're not winning. Well, all the Chargers had all of 6-10 seasons and a 4-12 seasons and couldn't score. That made it really hard. But everybody starts a winner beginning tonight and tomorrow night, and obviously on Sunday and Monday, at least the first weekend of the season. Everybody is tied for first place at 0-0.
Yeah, it's fun to track it from the beginning. Maybe week one, your team that never wins might be in first place after week one, which would be great. It's funny, you were talking about some of these old teams, and I remember when they went 6-10 or 4-12. Don't your brain ever have to stutter for a second now, because we have a 17-game season? So it's an odd number of games. So they go 10-7 or 9-8. You have to kind of redo the numbers in your head.
I was never good in math. Doesn't matter, because next season it's going to be the even number. Everybody's going to play 18 next season. I'm sure that's going to get approved.
Okay, well, they used to only do 12 back in the day. Okay, here, let's talk some Raiders. And this is with Gabriel. And quarterback, better off with Aiden O'Connell, in my opinion. Gardner Minshew II throws ducks. Defense upgraded, but you have to keep them off the field long enough to be effective. As long as they beat the Chargers and Broncos, that's my Super Bowl.
That's okay. I mean, you're probably one of the guys who runs into the back of the closet and touches that old dented, dusty trophy back there from Super Bowls from 50 years ago. That's okay. I think Sunday's going to be fun. There's no doubt that Minshew, I mean, he's like a member of a street gang, rides a motorcycle.
Yeah.
There's a persona that goes with Gardner Minshew. I call him a gunslinger. And it's going to be fascinating to see Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and all of Jesse Minter's blitz schemes against a Raider offensive line that I don't think is that great. How does Minshew cope with that and not throw picks? Or do the Raiders devise something because they know this heat's coming? He's going to throw to hot receivers. And I'll tell you what, if he gets Devontae Adams isolated on a linebacker on a crossing pattern and becomes a hot receiver, Devontae's going the distance. And he's got Jacoby Myers, and he got 2 tight ends. So it'll be interesting because this will be a test of Gardner Minshew's manhood to stay in the pocket in the face of the blitz. It's going to be a test of the Charger defense because if he gets that ball out of there and they start busting big plays, they'll chase the Chargers out of that blitz package. So that's fascinating. And then, of course, conversely, I love everything about Max Crosby, self-made individual. You got Mad Max on that end against Joe Alt, the number 1 pick. How cool is that matchup going to be? So there's so many cool storylines, plus the history of the dented trophies and the Raider fan who offered me a smoke of marijuana at halftime at the LA Coliseum, or the guy that offered to buy me a couple beers while I was on the air. I mean, Raider fan, maybe, I don't know, maybe it was Gabriel. Raider fan comes up in the second quarter of a game and you can tell he's inebriated. This is the LA Coliseum, was the LA Raiders.
Right.
Hey, Lee, how are you? You know, I buy a beer. This is halftime or late in the second quarter while I'm doing the play-by-play. And he's, because the press box was down right above the seats.
Okay.
You know, and he's just offering me a beer right there while I'm doing the play-by-play. Just Raider fans, they loved us. We'd go from the parking lot very early because we did this long pregame show when we were on 690. So we would get to the stadium at about 8:30, and they were out there drinking and partying already. And we'd be walking across the parking lot to go to the tunnel to go in to the LA Coliseum or even the Oakland Coliseum. And they knew who I was. Some of them are LA fans who listen. A bunch of them were San Diego fans that come up on game day. They knew who I was, and they'd be giving me crap, and then offering, you know, you want a joint? Want some beer? And, I'm sorry, 8:30 in the morning is a little early to be partying like that. And I got to go on the air for 9 hours. But Raider fans, they were so much fun to be around. And when we beat them, when we kicked Al Davis's ass, it was the most hilarious thing I ever saw. One other side story. So we're playing the Raiders. Maybe it was a Sunday night game in San Diego. Maybe it was a Monday night game. So they're going through all the pregame warmups, you know, and Chargers are at one end, throwing their pass patterns and all that. And I look up, and down on the field is Al Davis with his entourage. Al Davis in all white with a black leather jacket.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like the gear you got in your closet back there, dummy. And I look up, and Stan Humphries throws this deep pass down the sidelines, and Sean Jefferson catches it, and he plasters Al Davis. Davis was on the field, and he nailed him, knocked him down. And Al's glasses went flying off, and his hair was all mussed, and he tore his pants. He had dirt. This is when the infield was still the infield of the baseball stadium. He had dirt all over his white pants. And Sean Jefferson, he was Mr. Attitude. I could just see him look at Al Davis and say, "Oh man, get off the field." I'll never forget that. Davis just got sledgehammered by Sean Jefferson in pregame warmups.
Al Davis is like a evil villain in a cartoon, you know? I mean, what a guy, what a history in this league and everything he brought to it. I mean, props for Al Davis.
Sometimes.
A lot of the time.
Well, he brought the greatness of Marcus Allen and all the quarterbacks they developed, but the way they did their business was just to the left of shady.
Yeah, the mystique of Raider Nation. I love that vibe.
The winds of fall or the autumn or whatever NFL films.
That's John Facenda.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
But, you know, Raider fan is still loving beating the Chargers down by 60 points. Was it last year or the year before? Now, this game's at SoFi. What's your percentage of Raider fan versus Charger fan at SoFi?
People are saying it's going to be 70-30 Raiders.
Really?
which is, I find that hard to believe considering it's opening day, it's Harbaugh's arrival, it's the Powder Blues, it's Justin Herbert. I find it hard to believe there'd be 70% Raider fans there, but we'll find out Sunday at 1:05 p.m. if the color of the day is silver and black.
Well, the Raider fans will be storming the gates if they can't get in.
They'll be stoned trying to get in. Hey, Gabe, thank you for the input. You enjoy that weekend, Gabe, and you get back to us Monday. We're going to do a recap of the first weekend of the season. Next one, John.
Next one. Let's talk a little bit about NFL and gambling. This is from Surf Sun Sand. He says the NFL wanted a team in Las Vegas and let the Chargers and Raiders duke it out. The NFL will not force the teams to pay the relocation fee since the NFL has capitalized on the new revenue. The NFL makes more money on gambling and fantasy than they do on TV revenue, and it was determined to get a team in Vegas. NFL is rigged. Do you think that the Raiders in Vegas is to keep the integrity of no gambling in the NFL?
Where'd that one come from?
Yeah, that's something.
Oh, that's far-fetched. First of all, the Raiders had to get out of Oakland because the place was a sewer, and they could not get a new stadium built. Oakland's finances, the infrastructure of the city of Oakland are terrible. It's a city that has a lot of financial issues. Therefore, they had to leave, and they were going to leave. That's why they left the first time, came to LA, and then went back. The other issue was Las Vegas was a virgin market, and there was a lot of money to be made. Third item, the NFL did not want Mark Davis in Los Angeles, number 2 market in the country. Raiders, as good as they've been on the field, historically have not been a very good business model and business operation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
NFL knows that. Hell, talk show host knows that. So they did not. There was no way they're going to be allowed to go to LA. And the Chargers, smart people, first family of football, they had no knowledge that Mark Davis ran a garbage can organization, had no knowledge financially what a fiasco that place was. Why would they link up with those people and think they'd get anything built? That's why they got voted down. Was it 30-1 or 30-2? They got voted down to build a new stadium and co-own it with the Raiders. All the other owners said, hell no, we're not doing that. And of course, commissioner, they didn't want the Raiders in LA. So that's why they went to Vegas. They got a sweetheart deal because Vegas was so desperate to get a franchise, to build its own credibility, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think this has got anything to do with gambling sponsorships or anything else. By the way, that headline, the owners who moved did have to pay and have. Last year was the first year that they started to pay, I think it's $65 million a year transfer territorial fee to the NFL. Kroenke paid it. Spanos paid it. Spanos didn't have a lot of money. Spanos had to go borrow money to build the new practice facility they just built in El Segundo. So he's got bank loans everywhere. So it's a reason why the Raiders are not in LA. The reason is that they got a sweetheart deal to go there, and everybody's excited to have the NFL there. And the Raider fans travel from all over. But they don't sell 70,000 tickets in Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. It's just kind of weird. Just like this, it's weird the Chargers have not been embraced in LA, even though they got a really good quarterback, but they've been kind of dysfunctional. They've been a loser for so long that they dragged that reputation, the Spanos reputation, with them, and have not been embraced in the city of Los Angeles. Now, maybe that changes if they become a playoff team, if they ever win the AFC West. But at this point in time, no. So I'll be fascinated to see if it's a 70%, 30% Raider fan turnout Sunday against the Bolts. It's weird. They start the season, Raiders, Chargers. The last game of the season, Chargers, Raiders in Vegas.
Ah, nice. Nice bookends.
Okay, so I just said a lot. You give me your response.
Well, first of all, I hope Raider Nation shows up in force at SoFi. I want to see ruckus in the stands. I want to see people fighting it out, getting drunk off their ass. That's what makes Raider Charger games so fun. I mean, I had season tickets at Qualcomm. Raider game was you had to go just to. You
had to be in the parking lot before the game to see what was going on in the parking lot.
It was like watching a train wreck, and seeing the people in the stands just drunk off their butt, doing crazy stuff. It was insane. But I just want to say this. I think the NFL is better by putting their arms around gambling as opposed to pretending that it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to, acknowledge reality, then go all in.
We know the NFL is all about next revenue stream.
Exactly. So
It's
why
where the
not?
hell they playing a game in Brazil? You kidding me?
Right.
Players Association is so upset about that, about the safety situation. I mean, there's a lot of problems in South America. Just go talk to the people in Venezuela.
Yeah. Well, by the way, if they're in Rio at a game that's the Friday game, right? Philly
Sao
against
Paulo.
Pardon me?
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Well, you know what? Twitter X got banned in Brazil. So I mean, it's kind of goofy stuff going on down there as well. But I think it's great that the Raiders moved to Vegas. It's also part of that tough guy, bad boy image. It all fits.
It's going to be successful up there. I just wonder what it'll be like if they actually ever win, because they haven't bleeping won in a long, long time. They're not what they used to be, even though you and other people who wear their colors, that's all they have to grasp is what used to be.
Well, 20 years ago, they played in the Super Bowl here in San Diego, and they were close. But yeah, you're right. It's been a long time, and it is interesting. There's the NFL. You would expect there'd be more turnover, and these bottom feeders would win the Super Bowl, on a sort of an average basis. But it's not that way. So a lot of these teams have been banished for decades.
Organizations win.
There you go.
Bright people, organizations win. I will say this though, to Surf and Sun, you're a Raider fan. I want you to text and I want you to email all your friends. You tell the Raider Nation I'm here talking about them Mondays at 1 p.m. and Thursdays at 1 p.m. My co-host is a refugee, got deported from the Bay Area. So you got somebody to represent your colors. So feel free, just spread the word of what we're doing, because we talk NFL all the time. You got a couple more here you want to do?
Yeah, let's again, Raiders Chargers stuff together is just fantastic. Let's get another one. This is from we already covered that one. Let's go here. This is from DZ, and he says Herbert is an Iron Man. Bosa, on the other hand, isn't, but they have his backup plan on both the 53 and practice squad. They actually have depth this season, unlike last decade with Coupon Tom.
Well, I think in all honesty, they have great athleticism on the defensive side of the football. They got a lot of guys, the Chargers do, who can run. And now they got 3 number 1 draft picks in the offensive front. I think their front is pretty doggone good. And I think the pass protection is going to be worth watching. This Max Crosby versus Joe Alt matchup on Sunday is, I'm going to be charting this. This is worth seeing who gets beat, how many times they get beat. And then conversely, the Raiders, how the hell are they going to handle the blitz? Because I have no doubt that Jesse Minter is going to send people all day after Gardner Minshew. Now, will the Raiders beat him off the blitz? Will they get him out of the blitz because they keep hitting passes down the field? I think it's going to be a throwing game for the Raiders. I think it's going to have to be a throwing game for the Chargers. I think it's going to be a fun football. What a way to start the season to face the enemy.
Yeah, it's always great when you have that. Good guy, bad guy, the whole thing. Now, for the Chargers, I would expect, with the new kids on offense, you're not sure, but I'm going to say they're probably going to be all right. But it was always the defense for the Chargers. They couldn't stop the run, especially in that playoff game in Jacksonville. Derwin James is getting burned left and right. I mean, do you think they've fixed the defense?
I don't know that they got answers to questions at defensive tackle. Do they have enough to stop people from running the ball? Because people have run the ball on them each of the last couple of years. But I have no doubt. I think collectively, if you've pulled up a depth chart, you looked at the 7 linebackers that they have. They got guys who can fly. They have guys that are very physical. They have veteran guys. They have young athletes. They've covered the whole spectrum with the 7 linebackers that they've got. And they seem to think that they've got enough cornerbacks now. They just made the trade to get Elijah Molden, who was a starter and a nickelback from Tennessee. And they got Christian Fuller, who had come from Carolina. He had been a starter. So they've got some new cornerbacks to go with Derwin James and Gilman at safety. So only time will tell. But I think their pass rush is going to change the chemistry of everything as it relates to the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, and then you got Minshew there who's going to scramble, and it's going to be a cat and mouse for sure. But, DZ kind of talks about Telesco as Coupon Tom. I know you like Telesco, but do you figure he was a cheapskate, or that was really Spanos?
I like Tom. I think he's a smart guy. He's not a bold guy. He's not brazen. He's not Joe Hickson, who's making all these last-minute trades to churn the roster. So I think that's going to be fascinating to see what the Raiders do. Telesco is the one that's been given the final authority over the roster. He walks in and he tells Antonio Pierce, this is your 53. Now, Pierce coach him up. And Pierce is a pretty good motivator. but this is Telesco's roster. What happened here? I think John Spanos carried a lot more weight than Telesco did, and John Spanos was, gee, Dad, thanks for the job. I'm not sure he was qualified at all. But the committee, they made mistakes 3 years in a row on coaching hires. Brandon Staley, who was a bright light defensive coordinator, that was a failure. I never understood Anthony Lynn. I always viewed him as strictly as a glorified offensive running backs coach. When they hired Mike McCoy out of Denver, McCoy was the hot coordinator on everybody's job list. And I thought it was going to work. And he got here and he just seemed to be overwhelmed with the whole responsibility. So they went out and got experience this time. And they paid, they paid phenomenal, $7 to $8, $9 million for Harbaugh. They'd never done that. They'd always hired young, inexperienced, and on the cheap. Well, now they've invested in somebody with a resume. Now, Harbaugh's got a hell of a resume compared to John Spanos or Dean Spanos.
So who was the coach before McCoy? Was it Norv Turner?
Yes, and prior to that was Schottenheimer, who they ran out at 14-2.
Yeah, exactly. So look at the track record here of management is so horrible, and like you, I didn't feel like the previous coach, Brendan Staley, was a leader of men. He might have been a bright light. He might have had some schemes, smart guy, but he wasn't like the guy that you want to hold the flag leading the charge onto the field. He was more of the brainiac.
So it didn't work. It didn't work at all. I don't know if he'll ever be a head coach again, but he's up in Los Angeles. He's the assistant head coach, and he's overseeing the defense for the LA Rams and Sean McVay. And McVay, obviously, he's a bright light too.
These guys all land on their feet, even like the offensive coordinator you said is now in Philly,
right.
Kellen Moore. So, these guys, you think they're the dregs, they're screwing up, but they land on their feet somewhere.
Okay, listen, we hope you have enjoyed everything you have tried to present your way. Open